I do want to hop in to, in my opinion, some pretty big stuff that happened just like at 2 o'clock randomly right before the playoffs happen. I mean, some just really random. I didn't hear any. Although it's funny, this news breaks, right? Obviously, if you haven't heard, the Denver Nuggets are cleaning house, firing general manager Calvin Booth alongside firing head coach Mike Malone. Sources tell ESPN that is via Shams, a little Shams bomb in the middle of the day. I was taken aback by this. I was surprised. I mean, just really random stuff here. Out of this. Oh, I apologize about that one, and we're not going to get into that one yet. There's some really. I mean, what do you think of this? Because me personally, real quick, I'll let you get into it, but general manager makes sense. A lot of important stuff happens around this time of year. You create your draft boards, your summer programs, stuff like that. And if you don't plan on keeping this guy, then it makes sense to get rid of him right now. There's no moves to be made within the roster. It doesn't really affect the team as a whole. As for Mike Malone, I was reading I'm not sure how true there are no official reports. I've been reading things that the locker room was out on him and they didn't really respect him anymore. I mean, what do you think? This, to me, to a Nuggets team that you felt like they had Jokic, they always have a chance, and for you to fire your head coach a week before the playoffs starts, this is big stuff.
Well, the Memphis Grizzlies, they're trendsetters. They're trendsetters. We thought the Memphis Grizzlies last week when they fired Taylor Jenkins the Grizzlies, when they fired Taylor Jenkins, the Grizzlies had a record of 44-29. They were the 5 seed out west and had about 5 games left to go in the regular season, of course. And the Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins, and everybody's going, whoa, that is crazy. You guys are the 5 seed. You have a winning record. Taylor Jenkins is a highly respected head coach, and there is barely any time. There's a week and a half before the NBA playoffs. Well, the Denver Nuggets go hold my beer because they do it. They have a record of 47-32. So 47-32. They do it about a week later after the Grizzlies. They are the Nuggets right now. They are the number 4 seed out west. However, they're fumbling that 4 seed. They could drop down. The Grizzlies have dropped down all the way to 8. I made a tier ranking system of where I saw teams slotting into playoff seeding with 20 games left. I'm going, out west, I'm thinking, okay, OKC is going to be the number 1 seed. The 2 seed, it was a real fight between the Lakers, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, and the Nuggets. 4 teams easily. Mm-hmm. And then you had another tier of teams where you're going Minnesota, Golden State, and the Clippers. They're fighting for that 6th spot. They're fighting to not play in the play-in. Those are the 3 teams. And then you had Sacramento, Phoenix, and Dallas down there at the bottom of the play-in. That was kind of your tier ranking system. 20 games left. That's what I came up with. We're now about 3, 4, 5 games until the playoffs, give or take a couple of games. The change in all of that out west, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. The Grizzlies, they're all the way down at the 8th spot right now. You have the Warriors and the Clippers and the Timberwolves who could all move up to that 3 spot at this moment in time. Now the Lakers hold that. They lost to the Thunder tonight, but the Lakers, they're holding that 3 spot. It seems like the Rockets, they have that 2 spot likely solidified out west. We have all these other teams who could now move all the way up to 3. You could have Golden State move all the way up to 3, Minnesota, Los Angeles. Either Los Angeles club, really the Lakers or the Clippers. But the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, you could have a scenario where the Grizzlies and Nuggets face in a 7-8 playing game to play. Well, the 7-8 playing game would be to play the Rockets, but then the loser would have to play a game to play the Oklahoma City Thunder. And these are teams who were in the running for the 2 seed 20 games ago. Not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, they had the inside track. They had, those 2 teams specifically had inside tracks towards that 2 seed. Now they could fall all the way down to 7 and 8. And before Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone were fired, that's what really confuses me about this whole thing. So the Nuggets specifically, well, I'll say first, both teams, the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, they were going downhill before each coach was fired. But the main point here is I don't see how going downhill like this at the end of the season warrants a firing, specifically say for the Nuggets, with 3 games left to go. The Nuggets, they're 47-32 on the season, so winning record. It's not the most audacious record, but it's a winning record. It's best for fourth out west or third out west, depending on the day. But last 50 games, 31-19. All right, you're 12 games over 500. Last 40 games, 23-17. All right, a little less better, but all right, cool. Last 30 games, 17-13. So last 30 games, the Nuggets are playing more 500 ball, 4 games over 500. Last 20 games, the Nuggets are 9-11. Last 10 games, the Nuggets are 3-7. So the Nuggets have been going off the rails when it comes to their record. And late in the season, you see it goes from 500 ball to under 500 ball to really just losing basketball the last 10 games. Now, a couple of those games were close. We know the Minnesota game, that was a classic end of the regular season game. You see between two playoff teams. It's almost like a game we saw tonight. The Celtics and the Knicks kind of play that, not meaningless. They wasn't meaningless out west, but you had that late season game between two playoff teams ramping up, trying to play their best basketball. There were a couple of close losses in there for Denver, and that's what confuses me just a little bit. Where I go, how just looking at what the Nuggets did to their roster, right? They didn't want to sign Kentavious Caldwell Pope, didn't want to sign Bruce Brown. Okay, so that was the ownership's decision. Calvin Booth was somebody who thought, yes, the young guys are going to come in and replace Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell Pope. And I even said that on the broadcast the other night. I went, they have guys like Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strother. Russell Westbrook is an addition there that they didn't have a couple of years ago, who's actually producing off the bench. Some of those guys are going to make up for the absence of Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell Pope. That's what Calvin Booth thought as well. But at the end of the day, the team was just worse. KCP, no Bruce Brown. The team was worse in 2024 than it was in 2023 without Bruce Brown. And then they miss out on KCP in free agency, let him walk. The team is worse this year. That's where I go, okay, that's an ownership move. They don't want to pay more towards the luxury tax in order to pay these players. You could say Calvin Booth might have been on that train with the young guys. He was on the train from the young guy perspective. Ownership is on that train from a not wanting to pay the luxury tax perspective. But then when that goes down to Michael Malone, that's where I go, what could Michael Malone done more with the roster than what he's done this season? Because we went on a 9-game winning streak earlier this year, brought this team to 47 wins, and they didn't want to. Calvin Booth didn't want to bring back the players because the young guys. Ownership didn't want to bring back the young guys, or sorry, the Bruce Brown and KCP because of money. So how does this trickle down to Michael Malone? That's where I think a quote from Josh Kroenke, the owner of the Denver Nuggets, and the Kroenke family, Stan Kroenke. We all know him in St. Louis here. Moved the Rams out of St. Louis. We're all very, I don't want to say fond, but we all know Stan Kroenke in St. Louis in a certain way. I mean, you wouldn't believe how much people hate an owner when they move the sports team out of the city. But the Kroenke family, they own the Nuggets, and I thought what was interesting about Josh Kroenke's press conference earlier was he said he wanted to squeeze every last drop out of this season for the Nuggets. And to me, that indicated I don't think the locker room or the players were clicking with Michael Malone. I don't think
Right.
they were clicking with Mike Malone because if ownership believes at this point in the year that with 3 games left, the best option for them to win in the playoffs is for them to fire Mike Malone, the head coach, and to give the team more freedom, to give the team a different leader, that tells me there was a clear disconnect between the players and the coach in the locker room. It just that it has to signal that, or even there was that rumor too that there's a disconnect. There was a disconnect between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone from the standpoint of Michael Malone was playing the veterans too much, as in he was playing Russell Westbrook too much over Jalen Pickett. That was a legitimate conversation that was had earlier today when this all went down. Was Calvin Booth wanted Michael Malone to play the young guys. Michael Malone was more, hey, we're Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, more oriented towards Russell Westbrook, those players than some of the Peyton Watsons, the Julian Strothers, the Christian Browns out on the floor. There could have been some disconnect with coach and GM and coach and players. For as much as everybody loves Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone, I mean, they are hard-nosed, no shit-taking coaches. They just are. They're tough. They really, you look at their press conferences, they're very serious, they're very stern, they're very to the point, they're straight shooters. And I think that's great for you. Like a team like the Celtics, they're a veteran-led basketball team, but some teams maybe with more young players like the Denver Nuggets who are playing real minutes, maybe that rubs them a little bit the wrong way. Some of the personalities on the roster don't like being coached that way. Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone, they have a specific coaching style to themselves, and they are pretty to the grind head coaches. And I wonder if that might have impacted the locker room just a little bit for the Denver Nuggets. There was a report too that Michael Malone favored Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic more than other players,
I
which
would too.
I know. I heard that. I went, they deserve that. They're the two best players on the team. You had a player put up 61, 10, and 10 the other night, and you have Jamal Murray put up a 55 game uh, performance earlier this season. You have to favor those players in your lineup at any given moment. Though I mean, they're the best two-man game in the NBA last year. But you had all those rumors. I think there's a clear disconnect in the locker room. Otherwise, you don't make a move like this. I really, both the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, you don't make a move like this if you're a competent franchise and you think there's still something to be had in the season. If the Nuggets and Grizzlies ownership really believed there was something to be had in the season, and it wasn't already lost, they would allow Taylor Jenkins to play a first round series, to go out there
Right.
and lose. And by the time the playoffs are over for the Grizzlies, it could be after round one, could be April 25th. Same thing for the Nuggets, could be April 28th, could be May 3rd, somewhere around there. That's not even a month away. It's not even a month. So why wouldn't you wait 2-3 weeks to fire these guys after the playoffs? That seems like the competent move to do if you really didn't think, like right now, those teams, if you thought there was something to be had and that this season wasn't lost, you'd wait that time and
Exactly.
allow them to finish their
Exactly.
time, especially Michael Malone, who's there for a decade with the Denver Nuggets. The way you get rid of him right here, I believe it's tied for the latest head coaching fire of all time. Head coaching firing of all time. Hubie Brown back in 1981. He was fired with 3 games left in the season. So oddly enough, Hubie Brown, everybody knows, the 91-year-old just retired from broadcasting, called the Bucks, maybe Sixers game on ESPN a couple weeks ago. Last game ever. Legend in all regard, but he was fired with 3 games left in the season. Michael Malone's fired with 3 games left in the season. That tells me there's a disconnect inside the locker room, and that ownership
Right.
believed if we fired, if you're the Grizzlies, we fire Taylor Jenkins. If you're the Nuggets, we fire Michael Malone. We're actually going to get a little bit more out of our run than we would have gotten otherwise with these
Exactly.
two in the building, because these two teams are going off the cliff. The players are not playing with joy. They're not playing with spirit. They don't want to play. They're not playing with effort. We're going nowhere. If we replace the leader, maybe this changes just a little bit. And I'll also throw out here real quick. So yeah, I don't know. I forgot the last point here, but I'm sure I'll remember it as time
Right.
moves on here, because this whole scenario that we've seen here with the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, definitely not something normal. But
No.
I think the circumstances could have called for these things. And the Grizzlies, I think you set a trend a little bit. The Nuggets look at that and go, well, the Grizzlies can do it. We're going off the
We
rails
can do it.
too.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I'll say this. This is the one thing I was saying. Grizzlies, Nuggets, maybe they knew. I'm just saying. Michael Malone, Taylor Jenkins could have been fired after the season already. Maybe they get a little bit of a head start on their coaching search, just a little bit. I know they probably can't
Right.
interview guys until after the season, but maybe they get a little bit of a head start on that. And they even give Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone, maybe they're being nice to them and giving them a little bit of a head start getting their next job. But again, not letting them coach in the playoffs, not letting them finish the season out. I don't think competent teams do that. But the fact something was easily going on behind the scenes, because you don't do that if you
Right.
are a truly competent franchise thinking your team is going somewhere and thinking that ship could turn around. Something inside the building, particularly in Denver, even Memphis as well. Something was going on to the point where ownership went, nope, we want to get everything out of this season. If we replace the leader, we're going to get something different. And that's what happened. I can't explain it any other way.
Well, it will be interesting from a Celtic standpoint to see if you see Sam Cassell's name pop up in the head coaching searches, because last year we saw Charles Lee's name pop up. Eventually, he went to Charlotte. Be interesting to see what happens with Sam Cassell and if his potential departure, because he's a phenomenal assistant, very worthy of a head coaching job. So it'll be interesting to see that. Now, here's my take. Denver, and you know this. I have been so vocal on Denver's ownership, the laziness within the ownership. They win the finals, and since then, it's like they've been mailing it in. We have Jokic. Ticket sales are high. Jersey sales are high. Do we really need to defending champify? I don't think that's a word. Our roster, right? Like, is there a need for that? They haven't done it. And you make a great point. It's like, okay, well then if they don't do that, right, from a GM perspective, right, what are you supposed to do? Okay, if you're not getting the financial benefits of paying guys, where do you go? You got to go young. You got to find some gems. You got to play the young guys, right? And so from a GM standpoint, it's like, okay, well, you're going to fire me, but you're not giving me money to pay my guys, right? Like I can't pay them. So that's confusing to me. And then the confusing part to the Mike Malone aspect, this is a guy they waited 8 years on. They gave Michael Malone so much time in Denver before he eventually broke through and won a finals just 2 seasons ago. And for me, it is lazy. And you talk about precedents within franchises, it sets a terrible precedent within your franchise as to what the standard is. Because now here your team is, right? And there was a quote from the owner. He told the guys, go out and have fun and play and win some games, right? That tells me everything. Guys didn't like playing for Mike Malone. And he's hard-nosed, this and that. But to me, it makes no sense because this is a head coach. Just last season, you're the defending champions. Literally just 365 days ago to the day, you guys were the team to beat. You were the defending champs. Everyone was picking you to take down the Boston Celtics and go back-to-back. What are you doing? This does not give you, under any circumstance, the best chance to win. A lot of credit goes to Jokic in these series. You got Jokic, you got a chance. Mike Malone was an X's and O's guys at a point, right? You don't think Michael Malone was game planning in all those series against the Lakers in which they just kept beating down on them? I mean, Michael Malone is a champion, and you're going to fire him a week before the playoffs, 3 games before the playoffs. It was just lazy. I look at and this all roots back to the ownership. And again, I know I justified the GM firing, but also from a grand scheme, you need to allow your GM, if you're serious about winning, to pay his guys. And if you don't allow him to play his guys, you have to accept the fact that, okay, these younger guys are going to get some burn, and that's what the roster is going to look like. And I will say this, maybe this played a factor into it, the dynamic that you brought up between the GM getting these young guys and Malone not playing the young guys. Maybe there's a dynamic there that they were butting heads and they just figured to themselves, okay, we just need to clean this out, start fresh. Great. Don't know what happens on behind the scenes. I'm not a Nuggets guy. I'm a Celtics guy. Do it in the off season. Do it in the off season. Plain and simple. That easy. Do it in the off season. Really lazy, really lazy yet again out of the Denver front office.
Well, even more so, like I'm trying to justify some of these moves from the
Right.
what perspective were
Right.
the
Like, what
Grizzlies and
angle are we
Nuggets.
looking at? Yeah. Like, where are we
Like
looking at it from?
why did this move have to happen? Like, say for the Grizzlies, why did it have to happen a week and a week and a half ahead of the playoffs? Why did this one was even more egregious because the Nuggets have a higher standing. They have more of a chance. Like I've been looking at 2 teams out west that I think, oh, who could beat the Oklahoma City Thunder? The Nuggets and the Lakers.
Not
Well,
anymore.
to,
Not
well,
anymore.
see that's where how many times this NBA season changed because remember, we were literally this was after a post game, so it wasn't on a post game, but it was after a post game. I was saying, 2 teams I could see beating the Thunder was the Mavericks and the Nuggets because they have the 2 best half court players. You have Luka and Jokic, and then all of a sudden, like the next day, I was like, well, never mind the Mavericks out west. I mean, I don't see that
Yeah.
happening anymore. Same thing with the Nuggets right now. I even though I'm trying to justify it from an angle of going, okay, well, this must have been so bad behind the scenes that players were giving up on Taylor
Right.
Jenkins and Mike Malone. Mike Malone and Calvin Booth must have had a toxic relationship, not a cohesive relationship where you like to see what we've seen. Now in the ranks of the Celtics, we have the perfect relationship because we have Brad Stevens, basically the godfather of the organization, and then you had Whit Grosbeck. Now we have Bill Chisholm, but we had Whit Grosbeck, and Whit Grosbeck was typically somebody of stability. But Joe Mazzulla, he's going to be fine with any player you throw him because he's just happy to be a head coach. I mean, Joe
Right.
Mazzulla, he's younger
Right.
than Al Horford. He got hoisted into the job because Ime Udoka was ousted within the Celtics organization. And Joe Mazzulla is just happy to be a head coach. And within the Celtics organization, the relationship between GM and head coach is great. But in other organizations, such as the Nuggets, you have a long tenured head coach in Michael Malone and a lesser tenured person in the front office role of GM with Calvin Booth. And over time, you have Michael Malone who wants to play certain players, Calvin Booth who wants to see certain players get a run out in the court because he's going, look, the reason I have these young guys is for them to excel within the rotation, for us to get better so I don't lose my job. And you're affecting my job. And therefore, on the other end, Michael Malone's going, you keep giving me these young players I don't want to play. You're affecting my job. And all of a sudden, it becomes something where you have your GM and head coach just not on the same page whatsoever. And I could see that being the scenario in Denver. But again, I I see the angle of, oh, we want to squeeze everything out of this season and things were going south. And maybe if you that's where I'm like, how bad were things behind the scenes with the Grizzlies or Nuggets? Because if you think that firing the head coach with 3 games left and giving the team a free run with an interim head coach, which in the Grizzlies situation, um, forgot his name, but the blonde guy who was on TV the other night. That we got to get this information. I'm sure we got to get his name out here. But David Adelman for the Denver Nuggets. More importantly here, let me see Grizzlies interim head coach. I want to give him his respect here because some of these guys they don't get their respect. Tomas Isalo. Yeah, see, folks, it's a little hard to
I
remember.
don't know if the respect was given there.
Thomas Isalo. I mean, basically something like that. Isalo. But those guys, right? It why in the scenario if you're the Nuggets or the Grizzlies, like I understand the standpoint of like things could be so bad. You're like, okay, just clean house now. Let's see what we can do in the playoffs. Let's try to make a miracle run. But that's what it is. They're
Ah,
going to try to make miracle runs. They're not like, look at the Nuggets Western Conference odds or just finals odds after this. They literally plummeted because
right.
nowhere in NBA history, the last time we saw an interim head coach come in and win an NBA title. No, I'm pretty sure this was the last time. It was Tyronn Lue in 2015-16. But he came in at the beginning of the season. He came in like November. It was like David
Yeah.
Black coached 15 games and then they brought in Ty Lue and then he had the whole season from there. This one is three games. That's what again, just like I want to justify it from the ownership perspective. Maybe things were going wrong, but this is just incompetency, whether
Right.
it's from the excuse me, from the Nuggets ownership or the Grizzlies ownership because 3 games, 5 games, 6 games left in the season, however many for the Grizzlies. Those teams, those teams, you're not getting anything out of the playoffs. The Grizzlies are particularly concerning because it's going, excuse me, folks, scratch my
You
throat
could.
here. The Grizzlies are particularly concerning because the Grizzlies, they threw away 3 straight seasons after their breakout season. 2021 came out, made the play in, great moment against Golden State. They go into the first round, get smacked by I believe the Utah Jazz. They take out Steph Curry and Golden State in Oakland or in San Francisco rather. The court said Oakland that night, but it was in San Francisco. In that 21 playing game, 22 Grizzlies come out as the 2 seed, knock out Minnesota round 1, play a competitive series against Golden State in round 2. Ja Morant gets hurt. But from that point, it's been throwaway season after throwaway season. 23, you had the Ja Morant gun suspension. Dylan Brooks, he's shit talking the Lakers the whole first round series, and that lights up LeBron, and the Lakers run past them all the way to the Western Conference Finals. And then last year, the Grizzlies, we all know with Marcus Smart, they were just ravaged with injuries all year. Ja Morant missed most of the year. And then this season, the Memphis Grizzlies, they're actually competitive. They fall apart, and they fire their head coach with a week and a half before the playoffs. That's 3 seasons in a row for the Grizzlies. You're just completely throwing away with Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bain with that core group. You're throwing that all away, those 3 seasons, after your breakout year in 21-22 when they were surprisingly the 2 seed. The Nuggets, they win 22-23, that title. Last year, of course, we see they throw away game 7 after being up 20 points to the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's a big what if moment in NBA history now. Another what if moment in NBA history. What if Russell Westbrook makes that layup against the Minnesota Timberwolves a week ago. Does Michael Malone still have his job if Russell Westbrook makes that layup or doesn't foul on that three? I'm actually thinking maybe so. Maybe so. That's actually a scenario in which I think even with what's been butting heads, right? It's like, oh, Booth wants Pickett. Michael Malone wants Westbrook. Oh, and who completely blew the game down the stretch? Oh, it was Russell Westbrook after that classic game against the Timberwolves, a 2 overtime game. So the Nuggets, you now have though. Last year, you just threw it away in Game 7, and that's what sucks about seasons. You have a whole season where you're great, and last year you're the Nuggets, you're the 2 seed, fighting for the 1 seed until the last day of the season. You're the favorite to go back to back, and it's that one Game 7 you slip up in. Now this season,
Right.
all of a
That
sudden
you
the
had the
Nuggets,
lead.
they're
They had like a 20-point lead in that game, if I'm not
right,
mistaken.
right. Oh, well, yeah, 20-point lead. That game was over. It was the Nuggets are more experienced. They came back in the series. They're taking this
Right.
game at home, everything, right? Well, now this season, the Nuggets, I mean, they were 2-3 for a lot of the year. 2-3. You're thinking, okay, like, yeah, okay, C's great, but Denver's gonna have a chance. They have Jokic. They're gonna have the potential 5-time MVP on their roster. They're gonna have one of the best players in the series. They're gonna play a style of basketball they believe in. Michael Malone, X's and O's type of head coach. I mean, I was gonna mention this name. The reason Torrey Craig is on the Boston Celtics right now is because of Michael Malone. His career
Yep.
got off the ground at age 27 with the Denver Nuggets because Michael Malone went, okay, Torrey Craig, who at that point in time was just a random signee for the Denver Nuggets, somebody you'd bring in training camp, just bring along on the roster. No, we're actually going to give him a run, and he's actually a versatile player we can plug in and play. And that was Torrey Craig at age 27. And of course, we know Torrey Craig made himself a little nice NBA career, whether it was with the Denver Nuggets for a couple of seasons, with the Bucks, the Suns, play with the Bulls, the Pacers, and now the Celtics. That's because of Michael Malone. I just don't with the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, and speaking really on more the Nuggets here right now. That's a throw. This is a throwaway season. I can't see why you would go a whole season. Why I asked the question, why didn't this happen at All-Star break? Why didn't this happen in December? Why didn't this happen a lot sooner? Why would you get to a
Right.
point where you're 3-7 in the last 10 at the end of the year, where you're 9-11 in the last 20, where you are now in the 4 or 5 seed, and they've fallen a game, what they were a game and a half or a half game back of the Lakers, and they're half game up on Warriors, Clippers, Timberwolves, that group of teams. Why wait until right now? Because first of all, the Nuggets can still end up with the 3 seed. And secondly, it's like you went this whole season with this experiment. Why 3 games? It took you 79 games to figure out to fire Michael Malone. Why wasn't 60 enough? Why wasn't 50? Like he was gone in the offseason, most likely either way from this
Right.
scenario. But to keep him to do it now, it's just incompetent ownership stuff. It's incompetent franchise stuff. It's not a move that I really think the Grizzlies might have set a trend with this because I don't know if this happens if the Memphis Grizzlies don't do what they do with Taylor Jenkins last week. I think the Nuggets are going, let it play out. They see Taylor Jenkins is fired and they go, you know what? We're done with Michael Malone. This is so bad. We're done here. And it's shocking. It's crazy because Michael Malone, he's gonna go down regardless of how he exited here. He's gonna go down as one of the best Denver Nuggets, if not one of the best coaches in NBA history, winning a title with the Denver Nuggets in 2023, spending a whole decade there, really bringing Jokic along in his career. But I'll say this, the Denver Nuggets fans, you got to think we just talked to Dan Shaughnessy, and one of the questions we asked him was about Bill Fitch in 1983. Maybe
Yeah.
this is the Denver Nuggets Bill Fitch moment. Maybe they bring in a Casey Jones who brings them up to another level. And that could certainly be the scenario that happens in Denver. And I'll also point this one out too. Grizzlies, maybe they hire Mike Malone. Maybe the
Maybe
Nuggets
they swap.
hire
Maybe
Taylor
they swap.
Jenkins.
Is there
I'm
a
just
swap in the
saying that
future?
they're both great head coaches. They're both going to get jobs. If JB Bickerstaff could get a job after being fired from the Cleveland Cavaliers last year,
Right.
and it was like, he's not getting this team over the hump. And obviously, we're seeing what the Cavs are doing now. He got a job with the Detroit Pistons, who are doing what they're doing in the playoffs now. And to me, it's Michael Malone, Taylor Jenkins, way more highly regarded than JB Bickerstaff. No offense to JB Bickerstaff, but it is what it is. Malone and
Yeah, he's
Taylor
got a ring.
Jenkins. Yeah,
Right.
and I think those guys, they're gonna get jobs next year, and maybe they get swapped for each other. I'll just say that
Well,
right
you
now. That would
talk
be
about
that could that
talk
could
about
that could happen.
they talk about jobs. Here's a little fun tidbit. You know what I'm saying? Michael Malone has plenty of ties to New England, Rhode Island in particular. Reminds me of another Rhode Island coach. If the Celtics have some staff departures next season, Malone's a name to look out for. Again, that's from our good friend Dan. Go check him out over there on X. He's got a bunch of good stuff. So again, just a little fun little tidbit in that regard. But I mean, I agree. I mean, this is almost like if Cleveland fired Bickerstaff right before the end of the year, because Cleveland's season, if you remember last year, they were in a downward spiral. They had injuries and they had this and that. And I mean, at some point, it's kind of say, no, we got to ride this ship out. This year is what it is. And Cleveland doesn't have a player to the magnitude of Jokic. So I look at the Nuggets and I think to myself, they're tied with Golden State right now for the 4-5 game, the 4-5 seeds. Golden State a game back out of 3. Like, does Denver even get out of the first round now? Or is this a complete? I mean, I agree. I think it's a complete throwaway season. So you look at something like this and you think to yourself, just wow. I mean, just incompetency out of the front office. And I've been saying this, and it's like I'm tooting my own horn a little bit here, but I have been on this Nuggets ownership group for some time now, from just the pure laziness that they've portrayed and what they've done with this team post championship in a championship run, which is interesting. We could get into it. I mean, really, you talk about easy roads. You can really look at what Denver's road looked like and point that out as an easy road, not seeing a 50-win team at any portion of their championship window in their run. But since then, with the generational talent they have, Jokic in his prime years, he's got about 3-4 more prime years. Although Jokic is a guy that I could see going deep into in his career just due to his play style. But I mean, really, really, really lazy. I mean, you let KCP walk, you let Bruce Brown walk, you pull the Russell Westbrook stint. And I'm sorry.
That's the desperation move, by the way.
That's
Any
the
team going and
desperation
signing
move.
Russell
Yes.
Westbrook, it's like, who can we sign? It's like, that former MVP Russ. We'll 6 assists off the bench. Yeah, we'll get him.
Right.
Just get
And
him
the
in
funny
here.
thing about
Minimum.
the Russ transaction too, it's gonna bring in money. Westbrook's got a lot of fans, people, especially overseas. They might come in if they're in town to watch Russell Westbrook, get the jersey sales, the number 4 jerseys off. Like, I mean, that says a lot about the ownership. So really, my problem, this is an ownership. What are you doing, Denver Nuggets ownership? Because you have handled this franchise, a franchise that could have potentially looked at a dynasty. That was the talks in 2023. Multiple finals appearances, multiple finals wins, some rings. Jokic is a guy that is a 3-time MVP, looking at a potential 4th. I mean, just think about that. I mean, the 4-time MVP. You think of names like Bird, or Bird was a 3-time MVP. He wasn't even a 4-time. Jordan, Kareem. I mean, those are the levels of players that were more than 3-time MVP. LeBron. So just really, really lazy stuff out of Denver, and that's what I would classify it. Just laziness is just brutal.
And I'll say this too. You were on the Nuggets front office, or really ownership rather. I'm on the Grizzlies ownership, have
Yeah.
been for a while. Looking at their roster in 21-22, that roster was talented. Jonas Valanciunas, Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Tyus Jones. They replaced all of those guys with nobody. I mean,
With
absolutely nobody.
rookies.
I mean, you could say, right, some
Yeah.
rookies. I mean, the latest, Marcus Smart and Jake LaRavia, those are the 2 trade chips the Grizzlies have at the deadline, because they stupidly don't extend a qualifying offer to Jake LaRavia last year, which is really, as a franchise, just the most obvious thing to do with your players, because you get a young player for cheap. It's like, oh, cool. We get this young player who's in his 4th year who could contribute at $4 million. That's what the Celtics did with Sam Hauser, and now they're doing it with Baylor Shireman. It's like, we have these rookies who are going to be really cheap, who could really produce for us. Well, they decline tendering a qualifying offer to Jake LaRavia, so they're forced to trade him now this season to the Sacramento Kings, because they're going, well, he's going to walk in the offseason. We're not going to be able to pay him, and we now have to trade him to get something out of him. They trade Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart at the deadline, and you know who they get in return? Marvin Bagley. It's like, what are we?
That's another one.
What
That's
are,
another desperation. That's like when you're like, that's when you know you
seriously
there's
looking at who they've given up and who they've had over the last couple of years? It's very stark. It's like Valanciunas, Dylan Brooks, Tyus Jones,
Tillman.
Kyle
I mean, you even
Anderson,
look at Tillman. Tillman
Tillman,
was the
one
guy
of
like he.
didn't Lamar, they got Lamar Stevens for Xavier Tillman. And it's like he had some value for this. I know he's not playing with the Celtics this year, but he had some value with the Grizzlies last year. The Celtics wanted him. I mean, this year again, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia gave him up for nothing. Grayson Allen gave him up for absolutely nothing. I mean, placed him with Sam Merrill, and Sam Merrill, now he's on the Bucks. He's, he plays well every now and, or sorry, he's either on the Bucks or the Cavs. What is the Cavs right now? The Cavs. He was on the Bucks at one point. But yeah, you see Sam Merrill on the Cavs. He's played somewhat of a role with the Cavs, not the biggest, but it's another player the Grizzlies had at one point, and you let go, and you just let go of these talented players. And of course, prayers out to Jalen Wells tonight. That's one of those players. Okay. Unfortunately, the NBA news is going to be all right, folks. Going to be all right. If anybody on here on the broadcast didn't hear the news, Jalen Wells, scary fall tonight, but going to be okay. But the Grizzlies, I'm on the Grizzlies as much as you're on the Nuggets here. The Grizzlies ownership has been cheap. They've been lazy. They've sat on their hands, and it's why the Grizzlies are where they are right now, firing Taylor Jenkins. They're along with the Denver Nuggets, and they're going to the playoffs going, is Ja the guy, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bain, are they going to be good as a core together moving forward to win a championship? I don't know, but it's really around the margins. I talked about with the other night with the Grizzlies. It's about the moves around the margins. This goes with the Nuggets conversations as well. It's not always the stars. You want to have the greatest star players to win a championship. But we see with the Celtics, some of the players that make them great. It's not just Brown and Tatum. Brown and Tatum, now they were different players 3 years ago, but they simply didn't have the talent around them they have now. 3-4 seasons ago, Porzingis, Holiday, White. These are more extreme examples, but guys off the bench like Horford, like Pritchard, like Cornette, like Hauser, like Shireman, like Craig, all of those players, the little acquisitions over time, and those guys playing well, that makes the Celtics so good. The same thing applies to the Grizzlies and the Nuggets. They've fallen in those categories. They've been able to make it up a little bit around the margins with young guys, Gigi Jackson, Vincent Williams, Jalen Wells, as I mentioned with the Grizzlies. With the Nuggets, you have Christian Brown, you have Julian Strother, Peyton Watson, but that's just not enough when you're talking about real players who are coming in and playing and contributing to playoff rotations. Sometimes the young guys just simply are not. They're not enough for the rotation. And when you're constantly settling on the young guys, the minimum guys to make out the rest of your roster, as we see Phoenix right now. I mean, they have $350 million guys at the top of the roster. The rest is rookies and minimums.
A bunch of nobodies.
Yeah, if you can't get real talent in there, if you can't attain talent, if you're not making those little moves around the margins, you're going to end up with a team that just is lesser version than what they used to be. That's the Nuggets, that's the Grizzlies, that's the Suns right now. I mean, those are perfect examples of all those teams.